Park Ranger Angela Warner never feared the wild. In her 10 years of service, she had trekked through snowstorms, blistering heat, and dense forests known for their hidden dangers. She had come face to face with bears, mountain lions, and even the occasional desperate poacher. Through it all, she carried herself with a calm assurance that the wilderness, despite its capricious moods, was not malevolent. It simply existed, separate from human morality. But when the call came in about voices at night, disembodied murmurs luring campers away from their tents, she felt the first twinge of unease. At the small ranger station near Sunset Peak, Angela listened intently to the radio chatter. A local hiking group, returning early from a weekend trip, reported hearing distant whispering in the woods after dark. They joked about ghost stories at first, but the next day they found 2 of their party members stumbling back onto the main trail, disoriented and terrified. These 2 insisted they had heard a woman's voice calling them, urging them to leave the group and go deeper into the forest. All paths eventually led back to the same location, a remote, uncharted trail branching off from the park's official paths. The only reason Angela gave it credence was the consistency of the stories. Locals called it the Whispering Trail, though it didn't appear on any official maps. It was rumored to exist deep in the forest near Wolf Hollow, an area seldom patrolled. Ranger Will Kincaid, her partner at the station, shrugged as he relayed the reports to her. "Probably overactive imaginations," he said. "You know how folks get with legends. A breeze rustles leaves, they conjure a ghost. Still, the campers seemed awfully upset." "Think we should check it out?" Angela nodded. "I'll head in tomorrow, just to reassure them and the folks in town." She forced a confident smile. "Besides, there's never been a haunted trail I couldn't handle." That evening, she prepped her gear methodically. Sturdy boots, a canteen, first aid kit, extra batteries, and her well-worn topographic maps. Despite Will's skepticism, she felt a prick of dread. Voices at night. She'd come across superstitions before: wind howling through ravines, echoes bouncing off rocks. Usually logic explained it all. But as darkness fell, Angela stared out her cabin window at the moonlit pines. A strange hush blanketed the forest. Even the usual chorus of insects and night birds seemed subdued. She told herself she was imagining things. Tomorrow she'd find some half-hidden path, verify it was safe, and put this rumor to rest. Sunlight slanted through the pines as Angela set out at dawn. The crisp morning air carried the scent of damp earth and resin. She drove the Ranger Jeep about 2 miles past the publicly maintained roads until the forest grew denser and the official trails ended. Parking near a rickety wooden sign that read, "Wolf Hollow Restricted Access," she stepped out to begin her search. Her first goal, locate any sign of an offshoot trail. The official topographic map showed nothing beyond Wolf Hollow, just steep ravines and thick undergrowth. Yet countless local legends insisted a hidden footpath lurked somewhere in these woods, leading unsuspecting hikers astray. Perhaps it was a natural corridor formed by game animals and occasionally used by adventurous campers. The truth, she guessed, was probably simpler than the supernatural rumors. Armed with her compass and GPS unit, Angela began combing the perimeter for signs of foot traffic. She noticed faint boot prints in patches of soft earth, broken twigs, subtle scuffs on the ground, subtle hints that people had indeed passed this way. Following these clues, she found a narrow path weaving between dense clusters of pines. It wasn't a typical well-worn trail. The branches interlocked overhead in places, creating a tunnel of green gloom. She shone a flashlight into the shadows, half expecting a startled deer or raccoon to leap out. But all remained still. She radioed in her findings. "Ranger Warner here. Found a possible unmarked path at the northern edge of Wolf Hollow. Following it in about a quarter mile so far. Seems artificially cleared in places. Someone has definitely been using it." "Over," Static hissed. Then Will's reply crackled through. "Copy that, Angela. Keep me posted. Be careful." She pressed on, stepping lightly. The path twisted unpredictably, sometimes doubling back on itself around thick stands of pines. Occasional footprints became more common. The ground showed signs that multiple hikers had traveled here recently. This had to be the so-called Whispering Trail. The forest canopy knitted above her, dimming the sunlight until it was a permanent twilight under the branches. Her footsteps sounded unnaturally loud in the hush. At times, she paused to listen, hearing only the faint rustle of leaves. Despite the quiet, goosebumps rose on her skin. She shook it off. The group must have psyched me out with their stories. At around midday, she emerged into a small clearing. Fallen logs formed makeshift seats around a blackened fire ring. It looked like an old campsite, though no one was here now. She knelt, sifting ashes with a gloved hand. At least a week old. Someone had lingered here. She scanned the perimeter, no sign of trash or personal belongings. Angela's stomach growled. She sat on a log to eat a granola bar, gazing at the solemn pines. The air felt heavier here, as though the forest pressed in from all sides. She couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Continuing beyond the campsite, Angela spotted deeper scuffs on the trail. Some were fresh, as if left within the last day or two. The sense of being followed returned, prompting her to check over her shoulder more than once. Each time she saw only the arching trees and silent undergrowth. About an hour later she froze mid-step. She heard something. A faint murmur too soft to make out words. It came from ahead down the winding path. Could it be a person? Hand on her holstered sidearm, out of caution, Angela crept forward. The murmur continued, like multiple voices speaking at once in hushed tones. After another bend, the path abruptly ended in a dense wall of brush. The voices ceased as though cut off by a switch. She parted the branches. Beyond them, thick brambles formed an impenetrable barrier. No sign of any human presence. Frowning, she retraced her steps a few yards. The trail seemed to vanish into the bramble. Did I miss a turn? She scanned the edges but found no alternative route. All at once, the wind picked up, making the pines sway. A rustle overhead sounded strangely like laughter. She tried her radio. Ranger Warner here. Possibly found the end of the unmarked trail. Some noises like voices might be the wind. Checking a perimeter for a new route. Over. Static. Then Will's faint reply. Copy. Watch. Battery. The signal cut out. Gritting her teeth, Angela tapped the radio. Typical interference in dense forest. She decided to circle the area, pushing through some undergrowth to see if the path continued beyond the brambles. After careful searching, she found a narrow gap behind a large pine trunk. The path resumed, almost hidden. She suspected that anyone stumbling in the dark might not find it. For the first time, a chill stabbed her heart. This was no random game trail. It felt designed to confuse, yet curiosity and duty propelled her on. This region was still part of her jurisdiction. If campers had ventured here, she had an obligation to check it thoroughly, especially given the claims of voices and missing hikers. Each step carried her deeper into a hush that even the wind failed to break. She realized that birdsong and insect chirps were absent. Occasionally, a faint breeze whispered through the branches, but the overall silence pressed heavily on her ears. She tried to rationalize. Maybe local wildlife was frightened away by human intrusion, but it felt more ominous. At length she heard the murmur again. This time it sounded closer. She paused, heart thumping. The voice or voices were definitely not an ordinary breeze. They carried intonations of human speech, though too low to distinguish words. She swallowed, scanning the thick stands of pine. No one visible. The undergrowth was sparse here, so a person would be easy to spot. Still, the murmurs persisted, faint, insistent, and somehow directed at her. She inched forward. A sudden wave of dizziness swept her, like stepping into thin air. The forest blurred for an instant, then snapped back into focus. And that's when she heard it clearly, a single whisper forming her name. Angela. She whirled, drawing her sidearm. Nothing there but trees. Her heart hammered. A trick of the wind. She hoped so. Yet the voice had sounded too distinct. She forced a shaky laugh. You're jumping at shadows, Angela, she muttered to herself. Yet the whisper returned, repeating her name in a breathy hush. Angela! She could almost feel warm breath on her ear. Fear slithered down her spine. What is happening? Managing her trembling hands, Angela holstered her weapon and forced herself to move forward. She might be dealing with a lost hiker or someone playing a cruel prank. Her best option was to remain calm and investigate. The unmarked path dipped into a shallow ravine. At the bottom, mossy logs lay scattered, and old stumps jutted from the earth. She found more footprints fresh. Then, in a tangle of ferns, she spotted something white. Approaching carefully, she realized it was a small bone, likely from a deer. She breathed a shaky sigh of relief. Animal remains were normal out here, but as she stood, the corner of her eye caught a different shape. Wedged between two logs was a partial human skeleton, discolored by time. The skull leered up from the moss, jaw open. Angela's breath caught. She knelt, pulse thundering. The skeleton appeared incomplete, a broken femur, several scattered ribs. This was no ancient burial site. The clothes had almost disintegrated, but she could see faint scraps of fabric, possibly a hiker gone missing years ago. The park's archives had records of a few unsolved disappearances. Her mind reeled. She had to call for backup, get forensics out here. She reached for her radio. "Ranger Warner to base. I found—" She stopped. The device spat static, no coherent response. She was too deep in the forest for a solid signal. She rummaged in her pack for a marking ribbon. She tied a strip to a nearby branch to mark the skeleton's location. First, find a vantage point or a clearer area for radio contact. She forced herself to remain methodical. She would need GPS coordinates if the device would connect. Just then a familiar whisper curled around her. "Angela, up ahead, up ahead." Her blood iced over. She whipped around, scanning the ravine. No living soul in sight. The voice was eerily close, almost inside her head. Or was it echoing from behind the trees? She couldn't tell. A new whisper joined the first, and then another, layered and urgent, forming a soft chorus. She couldn't discern the exact words, but it sounded like they were calling her forward, urging her deeper. Her name, repeated, little bits of phrases, maybe half lost in the wind. Angela's rational mind warred with panic. She needed to leave, call in a professional search and rescue team, maybe bring police assistance for the discovered remains. But the path ahead seemed to call her name, pulling her forward. An inexplicable compulsion gripped her, a curiosity that defied logic. She found herself taking slow, reluctant steps in the direction the whispers indicated. The trail darkened under a thick canopy. Even though midday sunlight brightened the rest of the sky, here it seemed perpetually twilight. Her footsteps crunched dead leaves. The air felt heavy, charged with an unnatural energy. Then came a whisper that made her blood run cold. "Your father died because of you." She froze. That was not just a random statement. Her father had died in a house fire when she was 15. Angela had always carried guilt. She'd been the one who left the stove on, though she was too scared to admit it at the time. The official cause of the fire was listed as faulty wiring, but deep down she'd never forgiven herself for her potential role. Hearing that secret now in this haunted silence was like a punch to the gut. She whirled around, trembling. "Who's there?" she shouted, voice echoing. "How do you know that?" No response, just a faint hiss. Then another phrase, drifting from somewhere unseen. "You blame yourself, you always have." A sob fought its way up her throat. She pressed a hand to her mouth, tears burning her eyes. This was impossible. She had never told anyone the details, not even her mother. The forest pressed in, indifferent to her turmoil. "He was asleep upstairs," the whisper added. "You left the stove, Angela, don't deny it." She sank to her knees, heart pounding. This can't be real. The voices seemed to swirl around her, picking at the scab of her deepest shame. The wind rustled the pines overhead, or perhaps that was the hush of more voices waiting to speak. Forcing herself to stand, she clenched her fists. "Whatever you are, get out of my head," she snarled. But the whisper just laughed, a dry chuckle that seemed to emanate from the bark of the trees themselves. Staggering forward, Angela tried to block out the voices. She had to keep moving, if only to find a clearing or a vantage to radio for help. Perhaps the skeleton in the ravine was only one of many. She dreaded the thought of how many might have perished out here, lured by these uncanny murmurs. The trail climbed a slight slope, flanked by gnarled pines. Her boots scraped lichen-covered rocks. The hush deepened as if the forest held its breath. A new voice broke the silence. A woman's voice, eerily gentle. "Come closer, Angela. We understand you. We want to help you carry your guilt." She gritted her teeth. "You want me to get lost and die, more likely." The voice tisked, sounding oddly sympathetic. "We do not kill. We welcome. We are the forest's children." The hush swelled, punctuated by faint sighs as if many voices murmured agreement. Angela forced her mind back to practical concerns. She had to survive. Keep going. She forged ahead, ignoring the calls that insisted she deviate from the path. If she followed them blindly, she'd get lost like the skeleton in the ravine or the rumored missing hikers. After some distance, the slope leveled out. The forest parted slightly, revealing a region of older, grander trees, their trunks massive and twisted by centuries of growth. The canopy soared overhead, letting in only dim green light. The air tasted stale, as though little breeze reached here. She realized her hands were trembling. She'd never encountered anything remotely like this. She'd dealt with superstitions and strange illusions, but an entity that knew her personal secrets, that was beyond the pale. "You're alone," a whisper reminded her. "No one else can understand your pain." She clenched her jaw. "Shut up." Her voice cracked with tension. Breaking the hush, her radio crackled. She snatched it from her belt. "Ranger Warner here!" Will's voice, distorted by static, came through. "Angela, you okay? Lost your signal. Worried about you. Over." Relief flooded her. "Will, I found there's a skeleton, possibly more, strange voices. It's not safe. I need backup. Coordinates are—" She glanced at her GPS. The device flickered wildly, glitching out. The compass needle spun in slow circles. She swore under her breath. "My GPS is going haywire. I can't give a precise location right now. I'm near Wolf Hollow, deeper than I thought. Over." Will's reply was faint. "We'll help. Hang on. Storm. Might be moving in. Over." Storm. She glanced up. Indeed, clouds had gathered overhead, darkening the sky. She had little time before a downpour. "Understood," she said into the radio. "I'll try to find higher ground and reconnect." She stuffed the radio back into her vest. The voices snickered in her ears, mocking her attempts at reason. The mention of a storm hammered home the urgency. She needed to find a safe vantage or possibly retrace her steps. But the path behind her seemed to shift. When she turned around, the undergrowth looked unfamiliar, as if the trail had rearranged itself. Taking a steadying breath, she located the faint footprints in the soft soil to confirm her route. But bizarrely, they branched off in two directions. One set led left, the other right. Both sets seemed identical. Did she circle around inadvertently? "Angela," the female whisper cooed. "This way, come this way." She felt a tug in her gut pulling her to the right. Stop. She had to approach this logically. She decided to follow the footprints that matched the treads she'd left behind. She recognized the distinct pattern of her boots, so she took the path that seemed more pressed into the ground. But as she walked, the forest grew dimmer, the canopy denser. The air felt electric, as if a thunderstorm loomed. The hush was absolute, like the forest itself was listening. Another wave of dizziness overcame her. The whispering resumed, building in intensity. Staccato bursts of half-heard words follow deeper secrets with us. She tried to tune it out, focusing on the rustle of her own footsteps. Her father's memory haunted her, regrets swirling in her mind. The voices hammered on that guilt, eroding her resolve. At last, she emerged into a clearing, if one could call it that. In the center stood a single massive tree, hollow at the base, its trunk gnarled into a wide opening. The bark peeled away in places, revealing pale wood. A sense of dread coiled in Angela's gut. She had never seen a tree this large in these woods. "Look inside," the voices urged, their tones sweet and insidious. "Join us." Angela's boots crunched pine needles as she stepped closer to the hollow trunk. A foul, earthy smell wafted from within, tinged with decay. She swallowed, shining her flashlight into the darkness. The beam revealed the interior walls slick with sap or moisture. Then it caught on shapes piles of bones, dull white in the gloom. Some were definitely human. Skulls leered back, empty eye sockets. Clothing scraps hung in tatters. She counted at least half a dozen sets of remains, possibly more. Her stomach lurched. This was a graveyard. The final resting place of those who had followed the whispers. She recognized the partial skeleton from earlier must have been just one that never made it here. A swirl of panic, revulsion, and sorrow clouded her thoughts. She pressed a hand to her mouth to hold back nausea. She had to document this horror. Reaching for the camera in her pack, she snapped a few shaky photos. The flash illuminated the grim interior, a grotesque tapestry of bones entwined with roots that crept through the hollow trunk. She stammered into her radio. "Ranger Warner, discovered multiple human remains. A tree. It's full of—" Her voice choked. The radio sputtered static. She smacked it in frustration. If she couldn't get a signal soon, these remains might stay hidden. Stepping back from the hollow tree, she tried to collect her thoughts. Her duty was to lead investigators here, ensure these unknown victims were identified. The question that tore at her was why they'd ended up inside this tree. Were they driven by illusions? Did something kill them? "We are not illusions," the voices purred, as if in direct response. Angela's blood ran cold. They had plucked the word from her mind. "We are the forest. We collect the lost, the broken, the guilty. We welcome them, feed on their secrets, and hold them here." She felt a presence at her back, so real that she spun around. The clearing was empty, just swirling shadows. She realized with horror that she was trembling so violently she could barely hold her flashlight. A roll of thunder sounded overhead, and the first droplets of rain fell. Angela looked up, heart pounding. She had to escape. She'd seen enough. The wind picked up, making the pines hiss. The voice female, soft, commanding, spoke again. "You belong here, Angela. Your guilt resonates with ours. Don't run. Stay, and your secrets will trouble you no more." She shook her head. "I'm not dying in this cursed place," she yelled. Another flash of lightning illuminated the clearing. For an instant, she saw translucent shapes, silhouettes of people drifting among the trees. Then darkness returned. The rain intensified, beating a staccato on the forest floor. Angela turned to flee the clearing. The voices rose in a cacophony, simultaneously calling her name, urging her to remain. The storm's fury mirrored the turmoil in her soul. She forced herself to run, ignoring branches that lashed her arms. The ground turned muddy, each step precarious. Flickers of lightning showed the path twisting unpredictably, roots and rocks threatening to trip her. The thunder boomed, making her flinch, yet the voices pursued. They whispered or shrieked her name, sometimes in her own father's voice, sometimes in the voices of strangers. No, it's not real, she told herself. But her mind wavered under the assault. At last, she found a slope leading uphill. She scrambled up, half crawling on slippery soil. If she reached a ridge or a higher vantage, maybe her radio would connect. Maybe she could orient herself. Thunder shook the ground, nearly knocking her off balance. She crested the slope to see a partial clearing of stunted pines. She keyed the radio again. "This is Ranger Warner calling for immediate assistance. I've discovered multiple remains. The forest is. Something is in this forest. It knows my secrets. It's—" She broke off, choking on a sob. "Please send help." A burst of static, then Will's voice. "Angela, I read you. Intermittent signal. We have a team en route. We're tracking your approximate location via your earlier GPS pings. Hang in there, we'll find you." Overcome with relief, Angela cried, "Please, hurry!" Lightning illuminated the area, revealing a faint trail heading downslope on the far side. She hoped it led out of this nightmare, but in her mind the female voice hissed, "They can't save you from your guilt, Angela. You carry it everywhere. You'll always be drawn back, just like the others." She stumbled forward. The undergrowth seemed to tangle around her feet, as if the forest itself tried to snare her. More illusions. Or was the vegetation actually moving? She didn't care. She had to get away. The storm raged overhead, rain drenching her clothes. She nearly lost the path multiple times, the muddy ground sliding under her boots. The voices pounded in her skull, a ceaseless litany. "Angela, father, guilt, join us, free yourself." She realized they were urging her to let go, to surrender. Perhaps the forest's malevolent presence offered oblivion from shame at the cost of her life. The raw temptation flickered in her mind. What if she just stopped running, gave in, ended the terror? But no. She had a duty to the remains she'd found, to the living who might still wander here. She clung to that sense of purpose. Also, she recalled her father's final words, a memory that battered her guilt-ridden mind. He'd want me to live, not to give up. She pressed forward into the storm. Eventually the slope eased and she spotted a faint glow through the trees. Headlights. She let out a gasp of relief. Rescuers. Stumbling closer, she realized it was a single flashlight beam. She called out, "Hey, over here!" The beam wavered, and a figure in a ranger's rain slicker emerged. "Angela?" It was Will, drenched but determined. Behind him, two other rangers, their expressions grim. They rushed forward, and Angela almost collapsed into Will's arms, exhaustion weighing on her. "We need to get out," she mumbled. "There's something, a hollow tree full of bones." The voices. Will exchanged worried glances with the other rangers. "We'll get you safe first. Then we can gather a larger search team." Lightning cracked overhead. The voices seemed distant now, as if stymied by the presence of multiple humans. Still, Angela felt their anger, a subtle vibration in the storm. One ranger, a younger recruit named Bailey, frowned. "Bones, are you sure?" Angela nodded, tears mixing with rain. "I can lead you there, but not now. We have to. We have to leave first. The place is cursed." Will guided her gently. "We found your tracks, but they were going in circles. We're lucky we located you. Let's move." They formed a hasty line, forging a path back to the main trails. Angela leaned on Will, her legs shaking. She tried not to listen to the faint whispers trailing them, but scraps of words still reached her. "We'll be waiting. You belong to us." Hours later, they reached a known trail and then the ranger jeep. The storm had subsided to a steady drizzle. Angela was rushed back to the station, where they gave her dry clothes and set her by the heater. The other rangers gathered, discussing what she'd found. Will took her statement, scribbling notes with a concerned frown. She recounted everything: the unmarked path, the skeleton in the ravine, the hollow tree brimming with remains, the voices that whispered her secrets. The others listened, skepticism warring with alarm. Some chalked it up to fatigue, illusions from stress. But Angela's unwavering terror convinced them at least that something horrifying lay deeper in Wolf Hollow. A paramedic from a nearby county clinic arrived to check her vital signs, diagnosing mild hypothermia and exhaustion. She gave Angela a mild sedative to help her rest. Outside, the dawn was breaking again, pale light shimmering on wet pine needles. Before Angela fell into a fitful sleep, Will knelt by her bunk. "We'll form a team to investigate that tree. We'll bring GPS, everything. If there are remains, we have to recover them." He paused, eyes flickering with worry. This might be a crime scene, or something else. Angela's voice shook. "Don't go alone. The forest. It manipulates you. It'll use your secrets, your regrets, to lure you. You have to be strong." Will nodded gravely. "Rest, Angela. You did well." She closed her eyes, drifting into uneasy dreams. She heard her father's voice again, felt the heat of flames, the press of guilt. Through it all, the forest's murmur rose, promising release. She bolted awake more than once, gasping. Only at dawn did deeper exhaustion finally pull her under. Angela woke to find the station bustling. Will and half a dozen staff were prepping for a search expedition. Drones, ropes, forensics gear. They intended to find the hollow tree. Her eyes burned with anxiety. She insisted on joining them. She was the only one who knew the route. Will tried to protest, but she wouldn't back down. So the group of 8 rangers set off in 3 4x4 vehicles toward Wolf Hollow, each armed with both technology and caution. Angela sat in the lead vehicle, scanning the passing trees with dread. Upon reaching the approximate entry point, they spread out, marking GPS coordinates meticulously so they couldn't be disoriented as easily. In the early afternoon light, the forest seemed less menacing, though Angela still felt an undercurrent of tension. Sure enough, after hours of searching, they located the ravine with the partial skeleton. Forensic specialists took photos, carefully recording everything. The team's mood turned grim. This was proof enough that something sinister lurked here. Angela led them deeper, pointing out the hidden path. The group advanced slowly, leaving a trail of neon ribbons on branches. So far, the forest was silent. No voices. She wondered if daylight had broken the phenomena, or if the presence was merely lying in wait. Eventually, they reached the clearing with the massive tree. Rain-soaked and silent, it loomed like a colossal sentinel. The forensics crew approached with reverence and horror. Cameras flashed as they captured the gruesome interior indeed, multiple sets of human bones. One ranger stumbled back, gagging at the stench. Another, eyes wide, muttered, "Who could do this?" The whisper of wind hissed through the clearing as if in answer. For a moment, all was calm. Then Angela felt the air vibrate. The hush deepened, the pines leaning as though listening. She saw a flicker of movement among the trunks, a swirl of pale shapes. The faint echo of voices drifted on the breeze. One of the younger rangers let out a startled gasp. "I hear something. It's, oh God, my sister's voice." He clapped hands over his ears. "She died last year. How?" Others started to murmur in alarm, hearing private secrets, regrets, the voices of lost loved ones. Angela's own heart hammered as the forest's supernatural assault returned full force. The presence had awakened. "We are the forest. We feed on your secrets." She almost heard it chanting. Chaos spread. A senior ranger, trembling, dropped to his knees. I can't do this. My wife left me. I never told anyone why." The forest hissed, encouraging him to confide. Angela realized they were in grave danger. This entity could unravel them all, luring them to remain or to wander off. She shouted, "Everyone, focus on the mission. Stick together. We'll handle these remains and get out." But the presence wasn't finished. The hush broke with a swirl of voices, some gentle, some mocking, all prying into the rangers' minds. Angela felt her father's voice again, scolding her for the fire. She pressed her hands to her temples, fighting tears. Not real. Not real. "Let go of your guilt," the forest whispered. "Stay and find peace in the hollow." One ranger screamed and ran toward the hollow trunk as if entranced. Angela and Will sprinted after him, tackling him before he crawled inside. He sobbed, speaking nonsense about wanting to end his shame. Lightning flickered again, another storm rolling in. The wind lashed the trees. Angela knew they had to retreat, but they also needed to ensure the remains were documented. She shouted to the forensics team, "Take as many pictures as you can, then we're leaving now." The whispers intensified in fury. Branches overhead creaked ominously. Dead limbs crashed down, nearly striking one of them. The entire clearing seemed alive with an unseen malevolence. In a desperate act, Angela stepped forward, standing before the hollow tree. "You can't have us," she shouted to the swirling presence. "We're not yours." The ground trembled. For a moment, Angela feared the tree might uproot. The forest's voice hissed, "We have fed for centuries. You cannot deny us. Your guilt is ours. Surrender." Angela's mind reeled. She wanted to break down, to let the voice's compulsion wash over her. Instead, she pictured her father's face. She imagined him smiling, telling her to move forward, live a life of service and courage. She clenched her fists, tears burning her eyes. "No," she whispered, "I won't succumb. Behind her, the rangers hurriedly finished their forensics sweep. Will grabbed Angela's shoulder. "It's done. We have enough evidence. Let's go." She nodded, stepping back from the monstrous tree. A final wave of voices shrieked, hauntingly loud, as if dozens of souls wailed from the hollow trunk. The rangers bolted, guiding each other along the neon ribbons. Rain pelted down. The forest raged, but they kept each other grounded. They eventually burst from the unmarked trail onto the main path, hearts hammering. The wind died, the voices fading to a distant murmur. Everyone was shaken, some near tears. They loaded up their vehicles, returning to the station as another evening fell. In the days that followed, the Park Service coordinated with police and forensic experts to retrieve the remains. The media latched on to the grisly discovery. "Secret grave in Wolf Hollow," read the headlines. Over time, at least 5 sets of bones were identified hikers who had gone missing over the last few decades. The stories of how and why they died remained shrouded in mystery. No living perpetrator was found. The forest's presence was never confirmed publicly. Officials chalked it up to natural hazards and misadventure. But among rangers, whispers spread of something more sinister, a malevolent force that thrived on guilt and regret, luring vulnerable individuals to their doom. They posted new warnings around Wolf Hollow, urging people to avoid that region. Officially, the trail was closed. Unofficially, Angela knew the forest spirit, if that's what it was, might still linger, waiting for the next lost soul. She herself took weeks of leave to recover. Nightmares plagued her, echoes of whispering voices, the sight of bleached bones within that hollow trunk. She sought therapy, confiding in a counselor about her father's fire and her guilt. She realized the forest had used that unresolved pain against her. Yet, ironically, facing the forest's malevolence forced her to confront her own secret and the weight she had carried. She finally told her mother the truth about the stove, finding a measure of relief. Perhaps in a twisted way, the forest's power had catalyzed her healing. She still felt a pang of sorrow, but less crippling guilt. Months passed. The park was reorganized. Wolf Hollow remained under tight restrictions. Some hikers, ignoring warnings, still boasted about wanting to find the Whispering Trail. Angela dreaded that they might succeed. Because as long as guilt exists in human hearts, the forest's voices have a foothold. Late one autumn afternoon, Angela revisited the edge of Wolf Hollow. Officially, she was checking boundary signs. But in truth, she felt drawn back to ensure no one else had ventured in. The air was crisp, leaves turning orange and gold. Sunshine filtered through tall pines, giving the forest a gentle glow. Pausing at the old rickety sign, she listened. No whisper, just the distant call of a hawk. She exhaled, feeling a mixture of relief and lingering tension. The forest seemed peaceful now, yet she knew how illusions could lie. She thought about the lost souls who ended up in that hollow tree, their final moments haunted by voices that promised release. She felt compassion for them, and for anyone who carried secret burdens strong enough to lure them into the depths of Wolf Hollow. A breeze stirred, rattling pine needles. She almost thought she heard a faint whisper, her name carried on the wind. Angela's heart rate spiked momentarily. Then it passed, leaving only the hush of the forest. She carefully turned away, heading back to her vehicle. No reason to linger. Inside the truck, she sat for a moment, collecting herself. She'd confronted her darkest guilt and survived. She had a chance now to live free from that weight, but the memory of those voices would never fully vanish. Nor would the haunting knowledge that Wolf Hollow's malevolent presence might slumber but not die. As she started the engine, she offered a quiet promise to herself to the lost campers, even to her father's memory. She would continue to protect others from the forest's hidden horrors, and from the secrets that, if left unspoken, could devour them from within. Then, with a final glance at the pines swaying in the breeze, she drove away. Behind her, Wolf Hollow lay still and silent, as though waiting for the next set of footsteps to wander off the beaten path, lured by a faint whisper in the air. Come join us. Your secrets are safe here.